Gottardo Piazzoni by Diana Majumdar. Gottardo Piazzoni was one of the most important painters at the end of 19th and the beginning of 20th century. He was a major contributor to a style known as tonalism. Tonalism became a popular style of painting in Northern California, especially in and around San Francisco. He is best known for his landscapes done in that style. He was also a sculptor, printmaker, muralist, and teacher. Gottardo Piazzoni was born in an Italian-speaking part of Switzerland in 1872. He moved with his mother and his brother to Carmel Valley in 1887 at the age of 15 to join his father, who established a ranch there. This place became his inspiration and the subject of his work. Soon it was apparent that his interests lay not in ranching, but art. He enrolled in San Francisco School of Design, which he attended from 1891 to 1894, and then traveled to Paris to train at the Académie Julian. After a year, he enrolled at the École des Beaux-Arts, returning to San Francisco in 1897, and he joined the San Francisco Art Association and began his art career. California tonalism was an art movement that existed in California from 1890 to 1920. It became popular in Northern California, especially in and around San Francisco. Certain aspects of this style were very appropriate for the climate and topography of the Bay Area, which is often foggy and cold with subdued natural colors. Gottardo was one of the major contributors to the style. Tonalism manifests itself in taking a reductive approach, simplifying the shapes, editing nature to its most basic elements, and creating harmony between different aspects of nature. The three main characteristics of a painting executed in the style of tonalism are continuous horizon line, low-key color palette, and subdued or diminished lighting. As tonalist, Piazzoni was concerned with painting an abstraction from nature and not a literal transcription. In evening prayer, all shapes are simplified to the extreme. Composition consists of long horizontal planes of solid color, emphasizing the expanse of the land. Composition is broken only by the shape of the trees on the right and by the gentle curve of the land. The colors are subdued and have monogamous feel, evoking warm atmosphere of a pleasant evening. According to Piazzoni, his goal was not to make a copy of a scene, but an expression of what it meant for him. In Landscape with Cypress Tree, he depicted familiar Northern California coast scene, ocean and cypress trees and small human figures facing the ocean. Limited color palette with virtually no value contrast, gray sky, and subdued ochre hills were typical for tonalist style painting. Painting in the style of tonalism was supposed to show artists' spiritual response to nature and evoke quiet, contemplative mood in the viewer. Because of its symbolic meaning and the connections to the spiritual aspects of appreciating nature and the place that human occupies in it, tonalism was tightly connected with California culture of the early 20th century, poetry, literature, and transcendentalism beliefs. Some of the paintings combine landscape and symbolic art. In Lux Aeterna, which means eternal light in Latin, Piazzoni depicted simplified landscape and a kneeling robed figure as if in prayer. There is a small area of luminous yellow sky behind the dark hills. According to some, this painting was meant to represent Piazzoni's beliefs in the divinity of nature's forms and forces. Indeed, many said that his paintings possessed spiritual depth. 1907, returning from another trip to Europe, Piazzoni received his first commission for a mural. He strongly believed in the harmony of art and architecture. In his murals, he followed the same principles as in his paintings, subdued colors and simplified shapes. He embraced the two-dimensionality. His depiction of Earth's elemental forms of land, sea, and sky make one feel the eternity and vastness and human smallness. At the same time, it didn't present nature as a threat. Instead, his paintings and murals can be described as mysterious, dreamy, and poetic. In The Land mural, there is the same long, uninterrupted horizon line, softened shapes of the hills, and very limited color palette. In The Sea, the picture plane is dominated by the shape of the water. It is flat, solid, pale blue color. There is a strip of land on the bottom with only figures facing the sea, sitting apart, his reference to the divine quality of nature. In the far right and left panels, iconic cypress tree and rocky outcroppings are added. Murals are devoid of details, and contours of shapes are softened. Gottardo Piazzoni devoted his sole life to study of California's landscape and its influence on a person. When asked about his religion, he famously answered, "I think it is California." California artists embraced and celebrated nature. Piazzoni was thought of by some as the leader of California artists. His tonalist paintings contributed to the development of California art. According to standards of the time, his works were borderline modern, with simplified flattened shapes, and appealed to the next generation of painters. It could be said that his art made it easier to take the next step toward abstract art. Among his contributions are many murals. He also founded the California Society of Etchers. He taught, he worked up until his death in 1945. All his works were true to his words. Nature is a revelation of God. Art is a revelation of man. California art is as old as human presence in the state. Each style that represents California art is like a mirror held up to the place and its people, starting with the very first California residents, Native Americans who used the local resources to create works of art. California art has been influenced by the major events that shaped state's history: political, social, and environmental. Gold rush, Depression era, earthquake and fire in San Francisco, oil discoveries in Southern California, even climate, all contributed to the history of the state and its art. Artists created works based on their impressions of the place and what it meant to them. Most of California art, though, was not just a record of what they saw, it was much more. Deeper meaning and symbols were often found in works of art. Sometimes it was straightforward with orange poppies and gold elements found in posters proclaiming natural resources and beauty of California and meant to attract people from other states. Sometimes it was more veiled, such as in paintings of Charles Nahum. Charles Nahum witnessed the gold rush in California, and his paintings were based on his experience. Sunday in the Mines allows us to see California soon after discovery of gold. Unlike photograph, the scene with its abundance of various activities provides insight into the lives of the early Californians, but also portrays it as a place full of good and bad. Murals of 1930s tell us of the hardships that fallen on people and social realism that developed in reaction to the political and economic climate of the time. In a sense, art stepped in to record the true lives of regular people, provide employment, uplift the spirits of people, and much more. In case of Dorothea Lange's photography, art was not only recording life, it was able to change the course of government policies. This image became an icon and for many represents the Great Depression in all its human misery. This photograph was part of a series and was taken during her work for California and federal resettlement administrations. She traveled following migrant workers during the Great Depression. Her work played a significant part in attracting attention of people and government to the situation that millions of people found themselves and the need for the change. She did it in such a powerful yet gentle, humane way. The depiction of California by artists is constantly evolving, but nature and landscape were always at its center. In the early 20th century, two distinct art styles developed: Impressionism in Southern California, and Tonalism in Northern California, specifically Bay Area. This shows how the surroundings and the environment influence the process of creation of art. Tonalism was not only about painting what artists saw. They were not trying to copy the nature. Instead, they saw the art as a spiritual response to the nature that they considered divine. The art was meant to evoke a quiet, contemplative mood in a viewer. Javier Martinez was an important painter and teacher who adopted the melancholy palette and simplified composition that is typical for tonalism. Watercolors exemplify the style with its quiet, poetic evocations of a natural world, bathed in muted but at the same time luminous light. By contrast, Impressionists in Southern California painted bright, sunny landscapes. They admired the nature just as much as Tonalists did, but the climate and abundance of natural light and color led to the art full of spontaneity and cheerfulness. In Sand Dunes and Wildflowers, Theodore Wars utilized this impressionist approach to depict the bright wildflowers, including California poppies. His painting is a celebration of nature just as much as tonalist-style paintings, but here we don't find moody, mysterious powers at work. Instead, the expressive brushwork records nature in its joyful splendor. California art is unique in a sense that it embraced new. It is not bound by the tradition and customs. California, being a melting pot, attracted people from all over the world who rejected the old and looked for new. It has always been the place where new ideas and inventions were not frowned upon. This allowed California artists to experiment freely and resulted in a number of styles developed in 20th century that were not found anywhere else. Society of Six formed in reaction to tonalism movement. They saw Bay Area not as dull, void of color place. To the contrary, their works are vibrant and full of color. Selden Gile was the leader of Society of Six. In this painting, the influence of two styles can be seen. Impressionism is in its alla prima approach of capturing the light, and Fauvism characterized by the use of vivid colors. He was able to incorporate the influence of these styles but make it uniquely Californian. Bay Area figurative group rejected the non-objective art of abstract expressionism that was dominating the art world, and concentrated on the figure instead. In Figure and Landscape, Elmer Bischoff used loose expressive brushwork depicting an abstract landscape with a lonely figure. The surface is thick and textured. Painting evokes an uneasy feeling, a lonely human lost in a landscape. All throughout history, California artists created art that reflected the times and places they lived in. They explored new ideas and started trends and movements that came to shape culture in California and influence many generations of future artists everywhere.